Most of us travel via car or plane, but one of the best ways to see this country's beauty is by rail. Rail lines carve across some of the most scenic byways of the U.S. But railways also played a critical role in the history of our country. Along the tracks, towns were built, dotting the countryside from coast to coast. One attraction you can check out while in Savannah is the Railroad Museum, the oldest and largest existing 19th century railroad operations complex in the nation.
My name is Terry Kohler. I'm the Director of Railroad Operations at the Georgia State Railroad Museum in Savannah, Georgia. This site is the oldest collection of antebellum railroad shops, buildings in the southeast.
The Savannah Railroad Museum has tons of old diesel and steam engines to explore.
What we have behind me here is the oldest steam locomotive in our collection, built by Baldwin Locomotive Works, 1886. This locomotive was used kind of at the height of steam technology, the end of the 1800s. Steam locomotives are very time-consuming. They require a lot of lubrication, a lot of maintenance, a lot of repair. 5 steam locomotives could be replaced by 1 diesel locomotive just because of the limited amount of care that the diesel needed. So facilities like this became obsolete. They just didn't need roundhouses like this anymore to care for the locomotive fleet.
Steam engines use steam to power their pistons, but some fuel has to be burned to make the steam.
All steam locomotives burn some kind of fuel, typically coal or oil. Earlier steam locomotives burned wood, but essentially you're burning that fuel to boil water. It's kept contained so that pressure builds up, and then that steam pressure is used to run the engines.
One of the best ways to identify a steam engine is by its signature sound, of course.
The steam whistle is a very distinct sound that everybody's familiar with. Kids love to hear it. All of our visitors love to hear it.
Today's trains smoke the old steam engines for a variety of reasons.
Trains nowadays travel much faster. It's much safer with the quality of the track that they actually built. In the 1900s, early 1900s, the track wasn't always the safest or best built track, so they had to restrict speeds, how fast they could go, just for the safety of the train.
Savannah is a port city, and the interior cities of the South were reliant on the flow of goods from the port, and one crop in particular became uber important.
In Savannah, the railroad was built primarily for the export of cotton. Cotton was brought in from the interior of the state, originally by canal boat, but that wasn't efficient enough. Without the railroads bringing all the cotton in from the interior of the state, Savannah never would have been built up into what it is today. All these high-end houses and mansions in the downtown area, they were all built with cotton money from the development of that industry. Traveling in the executive railway cars, it was high-end. It was crystal and china, silver flatware. They had paid staff on board that cooked and cleaned. It was nothing but the best for the presidents of the railroad.
The Railroad Museum's collection is extensive, but the signature piece to see is the fully functional turntable used for steam engine repairs. The turntable served 2 purposes.
To get the steam locomotives into the roundhouse, you needed some kind of device to turn the locomotives until it lined up with the stall that you were going to bring it into for whatever repair or maintenance that it needed. The original turntable was called an Armstrong model. It was actually man-powered. They would balance the locomotive on the table so that it was equally centered, and then they would get 2 men on each end, and there was a handle that stuck out from the end of the table. They would actually move it, just push it manually. Later, as electric technology got more advanced, they were able to outfit it with electric motors.
Another term you're used to hearing when talking about trains is the caboose. It turns out that besides being the final train car, it also served a vital purpose as the office and crew quarters. The Railroad Museum is a great place in Savannah to travel back in time and see how folks got around before the automobile.
When you come to Savannah, there's a lot to see and do, but the Railroad Museum is kind of a different perspective of the history here. This is the technology that built this country, and it needs to be preserved and saved for future generations to learn from and to learn where we came from and how this country was built and how it developed in such a great nation.